of his alleged victims be made known. Attorney Mark Agnifilo blaming a hysterical media circus that could deprive Diddy of a fair trial, saying Combs should have the right to respond to allegations of uncredited accusers in civil and criminal court.
Diddy's courtroom drama took a shocking turn when the judge overseeing his trafficking trial lost her cool after spotting him smirking during the hearing. In a case as serious as this, with charges of racketeering, trafficking, and forced labor hanging over his head, his casual, almost arrogant behavior struck a nerve. The judge, already dealing with a mountain of evidence, wasn't having any of it. Now, with Diddy locked in federal custody, the question remains, did that one smirk seal his fate?
A moniker, like the pseudonym Jane Doe.
Parham alleges she was drugged and gang raped in 2018 by the bad boy mogul in California. The plaintiff claims she reported the alleged incident to multiple.
During Diddy's court hearing, something happened that got people talking, and it wasn't just the serious accusations he was facing. It was his behavior in the courtroom that really caught everyone's attention. Now, anyone who's ever been involved in or even watched a courtroom scene knows that respect is key. It's not just about being polite, it's about showing you understand how serious everything is. But Diddy, in this particular case, seemed to forget that rule, and it didn't go unnoticed. The judge in question wasn't just any judge. She was a seasoned magistrate with years of experience and authority in federal courts. She's someone who's seen it all, from minor cases to major criminal trials. So when Diddy showed up with a smirk on his face, it didn't take long for her to grow frustrated. Smirking in a courtroom isn't exactly a good look, especially when you're dealing with charges as serious as racketeering and trafficking. To the judge, Diddy's smirk wasn't just some harmless expression, it was a sign of arrogance. It was like he wasn't taking the situation seriously, and that's a dangerous impression to give when your fate is hanging in the balance.
And so what's going on is I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm trying to put a top 5 moment in the history of New York City. I'm not talking about just hip hop. I'm talking about one it up.
Especially by the judge. When you're facing accusations as heavy as Diddy was, every single move you make matters. The courtroom is more than just a place where legal arguments are presented. It's a space where everyone is watching, from the judge to the jury, even the public. And whether you realize it or not, your behavior is constantly being evaluated. It's like an unspoken test. Are you showing that you understand the gravity of the charges? Do you respect the process? In Diddy's case, his smirk suggested otherwise, almost like he felt untouchable or didn't believe the consequences could apply to him. The judge wasn't having it. She called out Diddy's behavior, pointing out that his demeanor showed a lack of understanding or respect for the seriousness of these charges. You could hear the frustration in her voice. She wasn't just annoyed by the smirking. She was concerned about what it said about Diddy's attitude toward the entire process. And honestly, it's not hard to see why she reacted that way. A courtroom is a place where showing respect isn't optional. It's expected. The moment you walk in, you're supposed to carry yourself in a way that reflects the weight of the situation, especially when the stakes are as high as they were for Diddy. Think about it for a second. You're in a court of law, facing life-changing charges. The judge is there to make sure everything runs fairly, but they also have the power to decide your fate in certain situations. The jury is watching your every move, trying to piece together who you are not just based on evidence, but also on how you present yourself. So if you're standing there smirking, it's like sending out a signal that you don't care. Or worse, that you think you're above it all. And that's a terrible impression to give off, especially when your future could depend on how the judge and jury perceive you.
Could anyone use this information for intimidation?
If anybody dares to attempt to contact,
Diddy's smirk wasn't just a minor misstep. It was a significant moment in the courtroom. The judge's reaction made that clear. In fact, her frustration was palpable, and she didn't hide it. She said outright that Diddy's behavior suggested he didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. And that's the last thing you want to hear from a judge, especially in a high-stakes case like this one. When you're in front of a judge who has the power to influence the outcome of your case, the last thing you want to do is irritate them or make them think you're not taking things seriously.
Where you go and you're going to be like, oh my God, I cannot
who's
believe.
there? Let's talk about
We got Dipset, we got The Lox, we got Remy.
Mary J., your sister.
I didn't.
What's interesting here is how something as simple as a facial expression, just a smirk, can have such an impact on a case. It's a reminder that in a courtroom, every little thing matters. It's not just about the legal arguments or the evidence being presented. It's about how you conduct yourself, how you show respect for the process, and how you acknowledge the seriousness of what's happening around you. Diddy's smirk sent a message, whether he intended it to or not, and that message wasn't a good one. If you think about it, courtroom dynamics are fascinating. There's a lot going on beneath the surface. Sure, there are the legal arguments and the evidence, but there's also the human element, the way people behave, how they react, how they carry themselves. And in Diddy's case, his behavior, particularly the smirking, added another layer to the proceedings. It became part of the story, part of how the judge and others in the courtroom saw him.
Of my clients who've come forward, that will be immediately reported.
The only civil settlement that we know of.
It's easy to imagine how frustrating this must have been for the judge. Here she is trying to manage a case that's already complex and high profile, and then you have the defendant who seems to be treating the whole thing like a joke. It's almost like he didn't realize, or didn't care, that his actions could influence how the court viewed him. And that's a big deal because, at the end of the day, the court's perception of you can play a role in the outcome of your case. Diddy's smirk might have seemed like a small thing in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, it could have serious consequences. In a courtroom, every detail matters. Every action you take is being watched, evaluated, and potentially used to form opinions about your character and your understanding of the situation. And when you're facing charges like Diddy was, you can't afford to make careless mistakes. Even something as seemingly insignificant as a smirk can make all the difference. Diddy's behavior in the courtroom serves as a reminder of just how important it is to show respect, especially when you're dealing with something as serious as a criminal trial. The courtroom is a place where respect isn't just expected, it's demanded. And failing to show that respect, whether through your words or your actions, can have real consequences. Diddy's situation isn't just about courtroom behavior, it's way bigger than that. He's in deep, deep legal trouble, and not the kind that just goes away quietly. He's facing federal charges that would make even the toughest person break a sweat. We're talking about trafficking, racketeering, and forced labor. These aren't just minor accusations, they're the kind of charges that can land you in prison for a long time if proven guilty. What's even more alarming is that these charges paint a picture of a criminal enterprise that's been running for over a decade. So, this isn't some one-off mistake or bad decision. It's a pattern of illegal activity that spans years. The charges against Diddy suggest that he used coercion and exploitation to maintain control over this enterprise. In simple terms, he's accused of manipulating people and using them for his own gain, keeping them trapped in a cycle of abuse and fear. That's not something anyone can brush off easily, and the prosecutors know that. They aren't going easy on him either. In fact, they've built what seems to be a solid case against him, pulling together multiple pieces of evidence that point to his involvement in these serious crimes. Now, when you hear about charges like trafficking and racketeering, it's already enough to make anyone stop in their tracks. But there's more to this case that makes it even more explosive. Rumors are swirling around that there are tapes, yes, tapes, of Diddy involved in illegal activities. And these aren't just rumors floating in the usual places. These tapes are supposedly on the dark web. The idea that tapes showing potentially incriminating footage of Diddy are being shopped around like merchandise on the dark web adds a whole new level of shock to this case. Just think about it. If those tapes are real, and if they end up being used as evidence in court, Diddy's defense is going to be in serious trouble. It's one thing to fight accusations when it's just words and claims being thrown around. But it's a whole other ballgame when there's actual video evidence of illegal activities. If these tapes are as bad as the rumors suggest, they could completely destroy any chance Diddy has of walking away from this case unscathed. Law enforcement isn't sitting around waiting for these tapes to surface on their own either. They're already investigating whether these tapes are part of a larger scheme to expose the full extent of Diddy's crimes. So it's not just about what's already been presented in court. There's potentially a whole lot more evidence waiting to come out. And if law enforcement gets their hands on these tapes, it's game over for Diddy. There's no amount of courtroom behavior or legal maneuvering that can save you when there's hard evidence like that against you.
Drake gonna be there.
I thought you would say that. No, Drake is definitely not going to be there.
Okay, so
I'm
he
still
said
coming.
no.
But you've been like,
But he didn't
you've
say
been on a roll.
He didn't, I was gonna say he didn't say no to other people.
She was on a roll.
All right.
And it's just going to be one big.
But let's break this down a little further. Why are these tapes so dangerous for Diddy? Well, in a legal case, especially one with charges as serious as trafficking and racketeering, the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty. That means they need solid evidence, something that leaves no room for doubt in the minds of the jury. If these tapes are as damning as people are saying, they could provide that irrefutable proof that the prosecution needs to lock Diddy away for a long time. And this isn't just speculation. The fact that law enforcement is already on the case trying to track down these tapes shows just how seriously they're taking this. They know that if they can find the tapes, it could be the key to unraveling Diddy's entire defense. And if that happens, it's not just bad news for Diddy, it's catastrophic. So, what does all of this mean for Diddy's chances in court? Well, if these tapes are real and if they show what people are claiming they do, Diddy's chances of walking free are slim to none. The courtroom isn't just a place where lawyers argue back and forth, it's a place where evidence is king. But let's take a step back for a moment. It's easy to get caught up in the drama of tapes and rumors, but the real issue here is the seriousness of the charges. Trafficking, racketeering, forced labor. These aren't just words on paper. They represent real people who were potentially harmed, exploited, and manipulated. And that's what makes this case so important. It's not just about Diddy's behavior in the courtroom or whether there are tapes out there. It's about justice for the people who were allegedly hurt by his actions.
Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, for an unknown amount of money. His trial date is set for May 5th and has denied all wrongdoing.
If the prosecution can prove that Diddy is guilty, it's not just about punishing him. It's about sending a message that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated, no matter who you are. And in a case like this, where the accusations are so severe, it's hard to see how Diddy can come out of it unscathed, especially with the possibility of these tapes hanging over his head. Diddy's situation is about more than just legal trouble. It's about accountability. Whether or not these tapes come to light, the charges against him are serious enough to warrant a thorough investigation and trial. And if the rumors about these tapes are true, Diddy's defense team is going to have an incredibly difficult time saving him from the consequences of his actions. It's crazy to think how something as simple as a smirk can have such a big impact, especially in high-profile trials like Diddy's. But in the world of courtroom dynamics, every little move you make can matter. When you're sitting there facing serious charges, like trafficking and racketeering, everything you do is under a microscope. Judges, jurors, and even the public are watching closely, and your behavior can shape how they perceive you. That's why Diddy's smirking in court wasn't just brushed off as a small, harmless gesture. To the judge, it was a sign that he didn't grasp the gravity of the situation. Or worse, that he didn't care. In a courtroom, respect is key. A judge's decisions, whether about bail or sentencing, can be influenced by how a defendant presents. When Diddy smirked, it was seen as disrespectful, especially given the severity of the charges he was facing. For someone in his position, facing potentially life-altering consequences, the last thing you want to do is annoy the person who holds a lot of power over your future. This isn't the first time a defendant's courtroom behavior has caused them trouble. History is full of examples where individuals, whether through smirking, laughing, or showing disregard for the court, ended up digging themselves into a deeper hole. Take, for instance, notorious cases where defendants acted out during their trials. Sometimes these small gestures ended up reinforcing the court's perception that they were unremorseful or defiant. This often leads to harsher rulings. In Diddy's case, his smirk might have been the tipping point for the judge, who likely saw it as another reason to deny him bail. After all, if someone can't even behave in front of a judge, how can the court trust them to follow the rules if released? Diddy's actions may have solidified the judge's decision to keep him behind bars, ensuring that his case will continue from federal custody. After the courtroom drama, Diddy was immediately remanded to federal detention, and things have taken a sharp turn for him. Right now, he's in a high-security facility in Brooklyn, one designed specifically for high-profile individuals like him. These types of facilities offer an extra layer of protection to keep celebrities and high-status inmates safe from the general population, but that doesn't mean life behind bars is easy. For someone like Diddy, who's used to living large, the sudden shift to a detention center is a massive adjustment. He's confined to limited spaces and doesn't have the same access to resources as he would on the outside. One of the major challenges Diddy faces while locked up is preparing for his defense. His legal team has already argued that his current situation makes it difficult for him to properly plan for trial. Federal detention centers, especially the high-security ones, limit inmates' access to things like the library or phone calls, which can be critical when you're trying to fight off serious charges. His lawyers are pushing to have him move to a different facility, possibly in New Jersey, where they believe he'd have more room to work on his defense. But ultimately, the decision isn't in their hands. It's up to the Bureau of Prisons, and that's no guarantee. This isn't the first time a high-profile figure has been denied bail and had to endure the hardships of federal detention. Ghislaine Maxwell's case comes to mind. She too tried multiple times to secure bail but was consistently denied. Like Diddy, she was placed in a high-security facility and faced similar struggles in preparing for trial. The system can be unforgiving, and once you're in, getting out before your trial is a steep uphill battle, especially when the charges are as serious as Diddy's.
Okay, so
far you guys are on a roll.
Well, this is what I want to know, though, because I'm trying to think. Put the terror squad
gambling with you guys.
You got to put the terror squad back together. I know you lost. Yeah.
The rumors about incriminating tapes of Diddy making their way onto the dark web have thrown another huge twist into his legal battle. These tapes could be a game changer in the trial, potentially revealing deeper and darker aspects of his alleged criminal activities. If what's being said about these tapes is true, they could expose more than just Diddy's involvement in trafficking or racketeering. They might highlight a larger pattern of coercion, exploitation, and even cover-ups. For a high-profile case like this, the release of such tapes can seriously sway public opinion and, more importantly, the outcome of the trial. The prosecution would likely use these videos as key evidence to strengthen their case, showing the court that Diddy wasn't just involved but actively leading these operations. The fact that these tapes are floating around in the shadows of the internet makes things even more complicated. Once something like this is leaked, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Not only does it influence the court of law, but it also fuels the court of public opinion, where perceptions can change rapidly based on these kinds of leaks. Then there's the legal and ethical dilemma. Should law enforcement be doing more to stop the distribution of these tapes? Of course, but tracking and controlling the dark web isn't easy. The tapes being circulated so publicly raise questions about whether this is part of a larger effort to expose Diddy's alleged crimes, or if it's merely a money-making scheme by people looking to profit off his downfall. Either way, the fact that these tapes are being shopped around Hollywood adds another layer of intrigue and risk. For high-profile figures like Diddy, the potential for this kind of evidence to surface is a nightmare. Celebrities and public figures often go to extreme lengths to prevent damaging materials from seeing the light of day, whether that's through legal battles, payoffs, or other more questionable methods. But in this case, it seems that once the tape started circulating, there was no way to stop it. Now, Diddy's legal team is facing the very real possibility that this evidence could be used against him in court, further complicating an already difficult defense. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, make sure to check out this next video.